Hello there and welcome Virtual Space Hero community. It is a tremendous pleasure being back here with you after 1.5 weeks, and it has been quite a lot been going on. I hope you're doing fine, and I'm already seeing here there's a lot of questions coming up because when I sent out the email, I got immediately within the 2 minutes, I got like 3 questions that people and community members want me to address. So don't miss today's Virtual Space Hero LinkedIn Live. Come and join us and stay connected here because, as you know, we are going to talk about your business. So we did a slight change in our topics in terms of content perspective because it's always about the virtual space. But this time we're not talking about virtual meetings. We're not talking about virtual teams. We're not really talking about virtual learning, but we're talking about our core theme, that is virtual events, and how you can use virtual events for your sales. How does it support your sales? And I do know, I got also that comment that we have been super last minute announcing this event, but it has been quite a few days. And it was also very difficult to get my expert on stage. He's very busy, and I'm very happy that he had time to be here with me. And with that, I'm already welcoming Jan Küster connecting from Germany. Hi there, Jan.
Hello, everybody. And Barbara, so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks so much for making time in your calendar. I know that you are super busy because all of us virtual events people or virtual space people, we're luckily overwhelmed with a lot of requests. But before we dig into the topic, Jan, how did you came to the topic? So we're talking today about virtual events, and that's also how I got to know you, talking about virtual events, but we're also talking about sales and marketing. So tell us a little bit about your background. How did you come to combine these two topics?
Well, I'm glad to do so. Yeah, my background actually straight out of uni was in sales. I did business development. And while I was living at the time in Australia, lovely Sydney, where I did my entire degree, I started really doing any kind of sales there is. I started selling knives. I sold insurances. I sold mobile phones. And so I actually, trained to be a marketing communication professional, but then I ended up in a sales role. And from there on, I progressed into selling software as a service product. So this was my entry into the technology space. And from there on, I upgraded piece by piece into more mission-based sales scenarios, very complex sales, such as formal verification for ASIC chip design. And it's exactly as complex as it sounds. And from there on, I ended up in the innovation space where we created several acceleration programs. To this day, I help Europe's largest innovation platform in getting their startup ready for replicable sales processes. And through this work, we did a ton of events. We did events for ourselves. We did events for Germany's largest trade show operator, where we hosted and actually built the startup areas. So 3 years ago, we thought, why do we have physical events? It's always the same people in the same ties, driving the same cars, handing out the same brochures. Where's the excitement? This is not new, and I'm not sure that I want to travel for that or that I want to spend time on that. So then we looked at, could we replicate that into the virtual space? And from there on, we went on quite a tour through different tools and processes and learned a lot, which I hope I will be talking today to you guys about. And that made me end up as today, a virtual event producer. And very often we do this to help companies engage their sales force and transform their sales force to operate more digitally. And I find virtual events to be the easiest tool to do so. And as you just said, we actually met on an event from a professional event software producer for other event producers talking about virtual event production. So that was quite the inception of virtual events. But very happy that it brought me here today.
Thank you so much, Jan. I'm just going to switch off the camera while I'm going to ask you, what about your virtual event background, please?
Absolutely. So from there on, the first hypothesis that we built is that an event must be different from a webinar. So keep in mind, this is all pre-COVID. We didn't come to a place, to a marketplace that was so thriving and urging and had that point of urgency to implement a virtual event strategy straight away. We started by just giving the outline. We want to create a better, a more immersive virtual experience, and how could we get there? So the first take that we really looked at was, how is a live event different from a pre-produced event? You could, we are doing this live now, but if I lose my train of thoughts or the internet connection breaks down, that's quite a lot of production risk. So the important bit here is in order to go from a pre-produced state where I can just pre-produce a video, fix it in post, and then move it into a virtual streaming platform such as YouTube or an academy or something. Why do it live? So we have to look at webinars as a live video or a live streaming event, and so that lives out of the interactivity with the audience. So not only us being interactive, having a live chat, but also the audience being able to post comments, to have questions, to really engage. And I can only ask you to do that, please. I'll try to answer any comment in the post, and even if you watch the recording here, I'll make sure to visit that. So any questions that you have on the subject of how virtual events can help your digital sales enablement strategies, super happy to answer those. But the difference, to finish this off, is really in an event, we want to have an attendee to attendee experience. So it's not just a webinar where one talks to many and we have some Q&A and some questions. The best virtual event would be if I can inspire you, if I can give you a train of thought that you either agree or disagree with, and then you find other people that you can discuss that with, because that's what we're missing. That's what we're missing, going to a conference, listening to a great speaker, finding somebody at a coffee bar and saying, hey, what do you think about rocket science that we were just talked about? Yeah?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, really, for bringing that up. And also, in terms of commenting and chatting, people use the chat function. We are really happy to know your questions and to answer your questions. Oi, 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 oi. Everything is good here on my side, so don't worry. Oh, but please use the chat function, and we're happy to answer them. And as Jan was saying, and I think that's also an important part, use the chat, also your questions afterwards, okay? But let me dive into the topic. So you were already talking about virtual events. How do you produce? Because what I heard from you and what I saw from you, I was really inspired about good virtual event production. So what is your secret, and how do you link this to sales activities? Because that's what we are super interested in.
Super happy to answer that. So as I've just mentioned, the attendee to attendee experience is everything you want to create in an event. But an event really it consists out of three different phases. You have a pre-event where you do all the invite, you do all the online marketing. Then you have the in-event experience where you want to create engagement. Your KPI really is attendee to attendee experience. And then you have the post-event phase. So that is where you distribute all the content that has been produced and distribute it to a wider audience, and also follow up with the attendees of that event. And each of those phases has its own KPIs, its own techniques, but what it does for sales especially. See, we come from a place where pretty much all sales activities can be categorized. Chat to you over LinkedIn, I can still reach out and have a phone call, and maybe even wherever it is allowed, have a physical meeting and wearing our mask. So all that will be working. But look at the other two categories, which are nets and which are seeds. So a net is something where I throw out a campaign because I have a target market that is very defined. I want to reach all of the pharmaceutical companies in Spain. Yeah, so I generally would go to a conference. I would try to meet them somewhere. I would try to engage in a meeting spot, maybe a conference or something else. So I don't have that anymore because we are not allowed for even some foreseeable future to have those event formats. So me as a business developer, I'm just robbed of this, my most expensive tools, because I throw out these nets to get many of my specific target market into my communication reach, and then have one-to-one discussions with them. And the last category being the seed. A seed is something where I plant a piece of my know-how, and then I hope other people will stumble across that, nurture it, make it grow, and then in sometime in the future, I can actually pick that flower, and happy here is my business, my dialogue with my client goes into the next phase. And those activities, we can still have spears, but nets and seeds, we got to be digital. And due to the nature of a virtual event, we can take all of these activities and replicate them there. And most importantly, we can provide value to an attendee if we focus on them by providing an attendee to attendee experience from the very get-go. And this is how good production of events translate into good sales activity.
I think I remember that the event that I was attending was a Remo event where you talked a lot about interaction and engagement of our participants during the event. That's also something that your company is designing, right? Engaging virtual events. What would you see? Because we can only link a virtual event to properly and make people be interested in the event if the event itself is engaging. So if you think about that, or what would be the 2-3 tips that you give our listeners, our Virtual Space Hero community, to be aware of when designing and producing a virtual event?
So first of all, you need to really design for creating critical points of interaction. What you want to do there really is that you keep that in mind. You want people to talk to each other, and then you need to facilitate that. So let's look at the event space that is out there. Obviously, you have a typical, "This is my talks." I have a section, I have a series of 5 talks that are just linked to each other, and you can ask questions in the meantime. That is one way of production, but it's not very engaging because it's a webinar stream. Then you though have platforms such as Airmeet, such as Hopin, but my favorite by far is definitely Remo, for the simple reason that Remo has a very intuitive user interface. I love the company. They're very ethical guys. They don't use the client data and target them themselves, which is important for me in a client communication. But you have virtual table. So we have people meeting there on an actual virtual table. Other software has a similar ground where they just provide individual virtual meeting rooms. And then you have a central stage that you can switch on to create your learning experience, to create your content, and then you switch off and people hopefully talk about that. So how do you get people talking? My number 1 tip would be definitely to design that point of interaction. If it's not through Remo or a similar platform, and you're just reduced, use video stream, use anything that a comment section has to offer, use something like Discord, where you can have a string of discussions. You can open up a Reddit thread just for an event, just any way that people have a dialogue online right now, and you know your market best, so you know where your market speaks online. Make sure you have an outlet there. And then I feel that the most important thing is really, getting people to switch on their cameras to engage. And if they can do this, then it's great. If they don't, at least get them introduced via chat and ask them one of the icebreaker questions. So, ask them, for instance, if you do an internal team event, one of my favorite icebreaking questions is, if you have a superhero that you can add to your team right now, who would that superhero be, and why does it need to join your team? And that gets people talking, because we all want to have an Iron Man or a genie or whoever come and help us in our daily work. So that gets people talking straight away.
I love that. I haven't thought, I love the question, first of all, as an icebreaker, because it's very different. And I also love it because I haven't heard about Genie, or I haven't thought about Genie for quite some time. Thanks for bringing that up. Is this also, when you talk about interaction, engagement, is this what you refer to attendee experience?
Absolutely, because you need to think about, you always have your speakers, such as me being on your stage right now, loving to be here. But let's imagine there is an audience, just like in a real event, and those are your event attendees. And an event, a great event, is a social gathering. And what you want there, the social connectivity of the participants, can only really be accomplished by getting them talking. Yeah, it's not about one person talking to many, creating a learning experience. Today, we learn much more sophisticated through exchanging thoughts, through having different viewpoints of the thing. So whatever you can do to stimulate that, in pointing questions to an audience is where the magic is at. So for everyone who is listening right now, maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't agree with me, maybe you have your own viewpoint on that. So I can just invite you to put that into the comments, to push that message out there somewhere. So, and ask questions, get the attendees to ask questions, not only to the expert, but also to the people themselves. Because here's the major reason why you want to produce an attendee-to-attendee experience in a business context. If you invite for a specific speaker, let's say you are in the logistic industry and you want to do something about blockchain adoption in logistics, smart contracting, and so forth. So you have a great speaker that can inform everybody about the subject, but what the expert thinks is not as important as what your market thinks. So if you get to have a dialogue about what everybody is thinking about that, because everybody came to listen and learn about that, that is where the real magic is, because the most and best resource in learning are peer-to-peer discussion groups and not necessarily just the classroom content.
And is this also when we talk about bridging sort of the emotional gap in digital communication, because this already, the way that you're describing the interaction, the engagement, it helps to build that bridge. But is there something else that you can do in order to build that bridge during a virtual event?
Absolutely, and the answer, as so often, is alcohol. Yeah. So when we have a virtual event, and when we help preparing a virtual event, generally, if I'd invite you to my home, if I want to bridge some gaps fast, let's get drunk together. And that is, how many people still do sales. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to get wasted together. It just means that you want to create an atmosphere that is not hostile, that is comfortable, that you feel warmed and welcome in. And to be honest, I love going to a bodega, having some tapas, having a glass of wine. It eases the communication. And we know of how many salespeople that just know the best restaurants, the best clubs in town, because we want to go to the social setting, not necessarily to lower our guards. It's about to have a warm and welcoming communication. And I don't know about you, Barbara, but did you ever have a webinar where you think, oh, I'm warm, I'm in my comfort zone through the engagement with other people, not through a one-sided communication? But when we have an event, and it actually happened last night where we executed on an event for a logistics customer, which is why I guess I'm pretty logistic geared today. But one thing that happened is we actually did have a bit of class front content, but then we did a quiz. Then we posted them questions to discuss at their tables. And so at the end of the night, and we finished the content at 8:30. We started the event at 6, and the event ended at 11:30. The event we had the day before ended at 1:30 a.m. That is, customers that have been in a video conference the entire day, spending 4, 5, 6 hours, like you'd go out with them. So what do? So either you ask everybody to please bring their favorite beverage, because in virtual events, everybody is responsible for their own catering, or you take charge of that. If you have a marketing budget to spend, make sure you produce a little care package, maybe with some bottles of wine, with some beer. Speaking to you from Munich, so obviously for us it's beer. And that means you can send it out in your post-event strategy, and then in your in-event strategy that already informs an action. We all cheers to the camera. Maybe we have a photo moment somewhere where we can also capture that. And then we actually try to replicate as much of sitting together at a table and having a good discussion as is possible.
That's a very good point. I'm just thinking about Kumu Space, that is very similar to Wonder Me or Yo Tribe before. And in Kumu Space, you can also, in some of the rooms, you can go to the bar and get a glass of wine, right? But of course, there should be also always anti-alcoholic drink, because we know that there are a few people who don't drink alcohol, right?
Absolutely.
But it's a good point you're making. And you know what, I really think it's interesting, because not only alcohol, but also food, of course, helps to sort of connect our participants. And I was organizing a conference where we had also the possibility to order from the same delivery, the same food, and then in the social areas, or like we had the lunch area, people were connecting over the same food, over the same drinks, maybe in a Kumu Space, Wonder Me, or Remo environment, whatever you choose then.
Absolutely. And I don't, being from Munich, missing the Oktoberfest, obviously my first thought goes into alcohol. But much more important is that, anything, eating, drinking, playing games, all this is social. And we run a lot of workshops in the new normal. How did the new normal change your working culture? And lots of leadership executives tell us, look, it's just become so much more effective. It's so great because I can have a 13-minute communication where, I generally in life on site, I would have used an hour or maybe 1.5. Now I've just been so much more effective, no more traveling time. All that is great. Me as a leadership executive, I love that being that effective. What we hear from the teams, though, is something entirely different. From the teams, we hear, I need my digital workplace culture. I need a place to engage because I bought into your team values. I bought into that interconnectivity. And we have to figure out ways of how to replace that. And that's just not hard business facts. Yeah, that's about connecting, sharing an emotional moment. And how do we do that as humans? We don't do that by learning about prices and offers and deals. We do this through, enjoying time together, having an experience together, playing together, eating together, whatever we can. And there's no reason why not to replicate that online.
And I think absolutely you're so right. And that's also why, and some of you know that Virtual Space Hero community, Virtual Space Hero events, usually we have a DJ, we sometimes have a magician, we have in bigger events, we are having sort of personal trainers who are doing stretching trainings in the break of longer events in order to have some sort of different and more engaging experience in the virtual space. Jan, you were giving fantastic examples, and I do see people out there. You're connecting from YouTube, LinkedIn, and from Facebook. So I see you out there. Let us know, what do you miss, or what did you already do differently in the virtual space in your virtual events? Let us know in the chat if you want to share with us. And also, please use the chat function to share your comments with us. Jan, but we talked a lot, I'm going to continue. We're talking about virtual events and digital sales enablement. So we were talking about creating dialogue, not a one-sided communication, because we do know that webinars are just not as engaging. We were also talking about content and event format, or content planning, and how to create content beforehand. So what would be your suggestions when we talk about how to create the content, or what content or what event format do we need to choose? Do we want to choose?
Well, I think most importantly, you first need to understand, what is my goal with the event? Do I want to provide any form of engagement? Do I want to provide know-how? Do I have a product launch? Be really clear about what it is that you're trying to achieve from a business development point of view. And then the first bit is that in order to provide a good event, you do have to feed interest. It's not just enough, to send out one invitation via some channel and hope that people show up. So I guess, sending them a care package up front obviously increases that. But much more important, if you look into virtual events, there's a ton of content production that is happening live right now. I mean, we are having some form of a virtual event right now, and this is going to be recorded. So you can actually look at repurposing that content. A video can easily be repurposed into a podcast episode, can easily be repurposed in a blog post, and so forth. And that solves a problem for sales, because a lot of the sales forces we speak to say, look, I'm super happy to become more digital. I'm already using LinkedIn. I'm already trying to get digital engagement happening, but I don't have digital marketing collateral from my office. My marketing department has so many other things to do. They don't produce that, fresh content I'd actually need to send out to my clients. And if you think about a virtual event, it brings you a huge opportunity of content production. All the talks, all the pre-marketing, all the pre-event marketing, where you can say, why is that important? And that always brings sales an opportunity to take that digital content, fast forward that content to their clients, and keep the dialogue great, because you provide value. Let's schedule back to that example of blockchain in logistics. Yeah, many clients are not informed about that either. So by writing a blog post about why is that topic important, give that out to my sales team, and fast forward that to my client, I've just created a point of interaction. In the talk, I do have the experts. I have many different video clips that I can then also fast forward. Post event, I had an engagement, and that means I can actually keep the conversation going by, having a comment section such as here, but also just by a one-to-one follow-up. So all that a virtual event does is at the same time produce a ton of content that can be repurposed along the sales journey for prospects, to clients, to ambassadors of your business. That can be fed with information, and it's being contextually driven throughout the event, and is not that much of an effort for the marketing department. That can then just take that content, keep it onto sales, and we have a digital loop that is event-based and makes a ton of sense to increase the efficiency of that dialogue.
I think what you also mentioned in one of our previous conversations is content will be leading to dialogue. And I really like that. And I really like to quote that as well when I'm talking to other colleagues, because I think that's the essence of it. Also, when we think about LinkedIn marketing or LinkedIn posts, what all the LinkedIn experts are talking about, it's content. Create valuable content, and then you can create dialogue. And through that dialogue, you might have a social sell. So social selling, and also maybe what you are sort of suggesting, using virtual events to enable your business or to foster sales, is sort of a social selling at some point. What do you think about that?
I would wholeheartedly agree here. And my take is that one of the most paradigm shifts when I started my career in sales, and if I called people up and I told them, look, I am the expert in such and such, they either believed me or they didn't. I mean, they bought into my story or they didn't, depending on the credibility I have. But this is not the way that the customer journey works these days. Customer journeys these days are a lot more demand-driven. You hardly have an opportunity to really outshine your colleagues through activity and initial contact. So you really want to stand out in producing high-quality content, because you must be a resource of information. You must be a problem solver, a status enhancer, but through know-how or through representing your company's know-how. And therefore, we need to be able to re-identify our business development role as much into a role of a content producer, and thereby not only fostering my personal brand, but my corporate brand at the same time. And that I feel is crucial in the new and ever more digitized customer journey that we need to cater to. Now, as a virtual event, obviously, I can provide such a lot of content in that, and it just happens automatically, And I feel that most importantly, just go out there and do it. It's not like that you're not writing a Nobel Prize winning technology white paper. We are just talking, and maybe 2 people are listening to this. We don't know, but we've already produced some contents that can be then cut up into bits and then repurposed along many other lines, and maybe one or the other person finds value in the advice that I can give here.
I think that's a very good point, but I'm also just looking now that you were also saying when we talk about content, repurposing content, so we are talking about rather big scale, let's say companies who have maybe a marketing department, a post-production or stuff like that. But even if you think about like those small and medium enterprises, or even one woman, one man shows, it means that they need to sort of develop the skills to produce their own virtual events, because many small and medium or one man, one women businesses, they don't have the whole post-production to produce a podcast, to cut it, or maybe they need to learn that. Because you were also saying, get sales and marketing to buy in. But in case you don't have that, if you're one women and one man show, what would you suggest? What tools to use, or what is the most effective strategy that doesn't involve that much effort?
Yeah, so first of all, a virtual event production is not so hard. So what I recommend is really look at Google The Art of the Gathering to really figure out what makes out good events. That's a perfect book to really start thinking differently about events. And then the next bit is, don't get all hung up on digital skills. You don't need to produce podcasts or music or videos or whatever, but delegate that. The most important bit is finding somebody to share a moment with on stage, getting other people to buy into that. And to be honest, I don't feel that setting up a Zoom or Teams conference with 5 or 10 people is that much technical skill required. Also using Remo. Remo is highly user intuitive, and that also is really going to be a good investment. Simply, whatever platform you use, or use StreamYard and use LinkedIn, the investment is really not that much, and that is, look at it as a marketing budget. You still have the recording, and then go on a platform such as Fiverr, where you can find digital experts that cut up your movie and do little experts out of that, because it produces your content. And if you are a professional, even as a one-woman or one-man business, we know that we need to be selling. We know we need to have marketing communication, and from everything that you earn, you set up a small slice in your marketing budget. And so the first thing you do is just really get out there and do it. You likely have a mobile phone, so tape yourself, say something of value, post that on LinkedIn, see what you get. If you want to produce a virtual event, find a subject that your market finds incredibly interesting. Choose a technology platform such as Remo, such as, I don't know, AirMeet, Hopin, anything that fosters the engagement bit. It's really important. Start small, don't go out there, try to make an 800 people event. Be happy. I mean, one of our most significant event formats that we have, I love to think about that, because when we run it now digitally, we have 500, 600 attendees. And when we started out, we were more people on stage than in the audience. Things tend to grow. But you got to start small, scale from there, be patient. And, but then if you produce all that virtual content, don't let it just go because people didn't have time on a Tuesday night to watch what you have to say. Use that recording and post it somewhere else. Run that recording through a transcription services. And those gigs you can get on Fiverr for somewhere between $15 to $100, and that is really going to inform your entire communication strategy. So I think that can be done at any scale. And if you're a one-woman show, the only difference is your niche is hopefully a lot smaller, because you don't try to cater to a market of 2 gazillion people. Also, you can be so much more effective because you don't have to go through review cycles. If you want to bring out something new for the Virtual Space Hero, you don't have to go to the board and ask the CEO for buy-in. You don't have to ask for budget. You don't have to run it through marketing. This makes, the volatility of a one-person business can translate into speed. And in startup land, speed is our currency. So, use your agility, use your assumption of risk, because you can just try things out there. And if they fail, you're not going to lose your job because you are your own owner. So I feel that you should definitely just go out there and try it. And if it becomes good for you, if you get money doing that, if you get new leads coming in through that, invest in some light, invest maybe in a camera, invest in that, training your know-how. Tons of tutorials on YouTube to teach you anything you need to know to create your own films. Tons of freeware out there. Don't use Photoshop, use GIMP. There's a translation of any professional media software by now in this wonderful liberated software space we're living in, where you can create anything you want if you just put the time to it. It's easy.
Yeah, it's a very good point what you're making, and I think this also to some of the organizations last year, it showed us what Corona did to many, particularly big organizations. It showed how slow they are in reacting. So it's really, I love the comment that you were saying, use your agility, use your flexibility, and just try and test it out, because we don't need any review from any kind of board of management or whatever council it could be. A very good comment. Thanks a lot for that. And I would like to touch upon a last point maybe, and it was about don't plan but iterate. And it's something that you mentioned in the prep conversation. What do you mean with that?
So what I mean with that is that, we all think about all the videos we could produce, all the blog posts we could write, all the wonderful things we can do. But by spending time on that, you're not being active in engagement in your market. So it's much better to produce something, put it out there, and then feel how your audience is reacting, how your market is reacting. And then you feel what was good about that and what was bad about that. And from that you learn. You don't learn through planning. So if in the innovation space that I work a lot in, we talk about the principles of lean startup, and there are ideation, so you have an idea. And then you have validation, you bring that to the market and show them and test it. And through that, you learn, you get feedback, you get negative comments, positive comments, and then you iterate. Iteration means you take all that feedback and you think about, okay, what of that feedback do I actually accept? don't necessarily become market driven. You know, you don't have to accept everything the market tells you. You're not a slave to your market. You want to create a positioning in your market. So, you know, think about, okay, that was actually right. Maybe next time I should use different lighting. Or that is an interesting point. I feel I sparked a discussion here. You know what? I've learned something today. My next blog post will be somewhat informed. But don't prevent the coming feedback and the iteration from getting started. Get started tonight if you can, or today.
That's a very good call to action at the end. Fantastic. But Jan, let me ask you a last question, and it was exactly about call to action. So we, of course, want to know, what are you going to do after this conversation, after you heard our comment? So really use the chat and let us know, and we can sort of follow a little bit your journey on virtual or digital business enablement. But Jan, if we think about, and we all know that for most of freelancers, own company owners or startups, sometimes it seems to be hard to sell in general. So there's the whole thing about social selling and how to build a connection. If we talk about the virtual events, to use them as a sales strategy, there needs to be a call to action at the end of a free event, right? Or shouldn't there be? Or should it be a follow-up later on? How should we deal, what would you suggest, the virtual space hero community, how to deal with that awkwardness of having a free event at some point, but at some point I want to sell something? So how would you do that?
So here is my take on this. Yeah, I don't feel that selling is awkward. I think that, you know, if you put in your research, then it's really easy to say, look, this is valuable to you because. And when I started my sales journey, I worked in a store with the sales champion of the telephone, the mobile phone company at the time. And so the one thing I asked him was, how are you that successful? What's your secret? What's your secret technique to selling so much? He said, do you want to see it? And so he went on to ask a client, do you want to buy that? And the client said, no. And he asked, why not? And that was the finish of a secret. Because then the client would say, look, that phone is actually cheaper over there. So, okay, I'll make you a good price. But over there, I got that free accessory. Okay, so if I check the accessory, now we're having a deal. So I feel social selling is great to warm up an interest and to reach a lot of market. But at the end of the day, you are likely not you need to pay bills. You need to, if you go bigger, you need to pay salaries, you need to pay rents, you need to do things. And nobody, not a professional business person, will always agree that this is a sales moment. That's okay. So let me know what your service is. Use your virtual event to provide value. Maybe it's expertise, maybe it's enhanced credibility, maybe you invite some customers to the event that you're already having that can speak about the things that they've done for you, that you've done for them, and vice versa. So there's a lot of ways. And then, you know, at the end of the day, you do have a list, and you can easily use that list to come up with your sales call. You know, it is okay to engage. And I always compare that to a degree to dating. You know, it's you need to take that first step. And I don't think that if you're two strangers at a bar and you're having a flirtatious communication, this is not necessarily about anything else, but maybe leading to a romantic episode of some kind. There is not that much pretext. And if you invite me to a virtual event that I don't pay for and where you provide the value of your product, then I do understand that that is part of a sales dialogue. And you should never be worried of having that sales dialogue, because what do you get? I'm not buying from you because, and talking about iteration, that's where we want to be at. We want to get that feedback. I'm not buying from you because you're in Spain and I need somebody here in Munich and I can't do virtual because I don't know any reason that would apply. But that is then a reason where you can say, yeah, I guess you are not my target market. And I feel all the objections and the pretext you can get from your market to that question are awesome. But look at an event that where you don't have to have that situation from the get-go. You don't call somebody up, so you want to buy social media from me? You invite to an event where you say best practices in social media, how to be successful on LinkedIn or whatever. I have 3 experts who will be having talks, and the community can talk about that. And then after that, you can send a send out saying, now you've learned a lot, just letting you know, I'm providing such services, and I would be super glad if we can enter into a dialogue about what I can do for you. Or you can use the event and say, look, for all of the attendees that were at the event, we have a discounted offer, or we have a more valuable offer because we already got to know each other. Or you can simply ask for feedback. You have a quick type form or Google form where you say, look, based on what you heard, this is our offer. Can you answer 3 questions to tell me whether the offer works for you? There's tons of things, but the important part, coming back to alcohol, coming back to the social engagement, coming back to providing a warm, nice moment. If you focus on that in your event, you don't necessarily have to have that sales moment where you get your offer rejected. You are getting to know your client in a good setting. And you can find out in a dialogue if there's something of value you can provide. And again, nobody is going to reject you for issuing an offer. You're going to be rejected because the value is not applicable at the time, so I don't want to invest resources in getting that value. And that's cool. Yeah, that's a response. And this is why I say iterate. Get that response as fast as you can, because then you develop. You can't get strong without the exercise and the diet, and it's the same thing. You got to provide results.
Yeah, Jan, it was a tremendous conversation. I'm just picking up one of your last quotes that you say that good formats will scale independently of Zoom or screen fatigue. And I think that's really super important here. Thank you so much for sharing all your tips about how to enable your sales through virtual events, because I think that's a channel that some entrepreneurs are not really using enough or properly. And so thanks so much for sharing all your wisdom and your expertise here in the Virtual Space Hero community, in the Virtual Space Hero LinkedIn Live. And you know that I have prepared a small virtual cocktail backstage, and I'm going to join you immediately. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Barbara. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. See you in a bit. Virtual Space Hero community, thanks a lot for being with us also today. I hope you have your own call to action. Virtual events can be a tremendous channel for you and your business to enable sales and to foster sales. And with that, I'm leaving you already here. I hope to see you next week during the Virtual Space Hero LinkedIn Live. We're going to pick up on a slightly different topic. Check out the webpage, virtualspacehero.com, where you can find all the upcoming LinkedIn Lives until June, end of June. They are already scheduled. So with that, thanks a lot for being with us and enjoy the evening. Become a hero of the virtual space.